Today I'll be sharing some updates on recent finished projects, discussing my yarn tour in Iceland, and exciting summer cast-ons. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Helenitz. My name is Julia and we're back. It's been so long since I filmed a video like this. I feel like it's been forever. I was super busy with exams and I've honestly been doing a lot of sewing since the summer has really heated up because knitting with wool is not exactly what I was interested in at the moment, and I've had some important things that I've had to sew. But now I'm sort of back in knitting mode and I'm super excited to share everything I've been doing with you all. Today I'm not wearing any of my hand knits because it's about 35 degrees outside today, so we're just rocking the t-shirt. Alright, let's just get into it because I have so much that I want to talk to you about. The first thing I want to share with you is my finished Super Selene sweater from Ventzel. So this is a top-down colorwork yoke sweater and it's super oversized and boxy. It has really long sleeves, but the body's not too long because I did the cropped version. It has two different versions of the sweater in the pattern. So I did the cropped version and I knit the smallest size. And it's honestly quite oversized, but it is kind of perfectly oversized. I was worried it maybe was a little too big, but it's perfect. The actual writing of the pattern was also incredible. I had never knit from an Ventzel pattern before, and I wasn't really sure what to expect, but I honestly really enjoyed it, and I appreciated all of the explanations that she put in. It wasn't too much, but it was just enough to make everything super clear and easy to follow. Even the color work, she explains which color to hold dominant as you're going through the colorwork yoke so that the points on the little triangles are nice and sharp. The black yarn on this sweater is Knitting for All of Heavy Merino, held with one strand of Sandnes Garn Tynn Silk Mohair in black, and then the white color is Cascade 220 in the color white, held again with a strand of Sandnes Garn Tynn Silk Mohair in white. I am honestly loving the way that this fabric turned out. Like, it's super drapey, it's not too thick, which I was kind of worried it would be, but it's really fluffy, really comfortable, and it's kind of the perfect oversized sweater. I did have concerns when I was blocking this about the black bleeding into the white, and I didn't pre-wash the yarn to get the dye out, and I also didn't gauge swatch with both colors to see how the bleeding was because I was worried I didn't have enough yarn. So that was quite the risk on my part. I was really worried that I would just have a gray sweater, but when I blocked it, I added a little bit of vinegar into the water, and I've heard that that helps keep the dye from bleeding too much. I don't know if that actually did anything, but I didn't have any bleeding at all, so that was definitely a relief. I don't know if the Knitting for Olive and the Sandnes Garn Mohair in black actually bleed on their own, but when I was blocking it, I didn't have any issues. So you can see the white is maybe a little duller than it was in the ball, but looking at it from far away, I don't think you can tell at all. So I'm super relieved that there was no bleeding. I did notice that my gauge with the color work was quite tight, even having gone up a needle size to knit it. I think it could be because the floats on this one are really long and I had to catch them, and I've never had to do that before. So you can see here, when you hold it flat, the transition from the colorwork to the sleeve is kind of balloon looking, but when I'm wearing it, I don't think it's really that noticeable. So all in all, I'm not too worried about that, and I am so happy with how this turned out. It is really oversized, as I said, but I feel like it's the perfect amount of oversized because it's so boxy and cropped. It doesn't look like it's drowning me. This sweater, actually, I didn't think I'd be able to wear it this summer because I just finished it in the springtime. I thought, well, it's gonna be way too hot to wear over the summer. I'll just have to wait until winter, which is fine. But my partner and I went to Iceland last week and I brought this, and it actually was the perfect sweater to bring because it was thick and warm with the mohair, but it wasn't too dense and heavy that I couldn't wear layers underneath. So this kept me nice and warm on my trip. So yeah, overall, I'm honestly so pleased with this pattern. I'm really glad that I knit it. I was a little skeptical at first, worried that I might not like it, but I love it. I think it's perfect. I did knit the neck shorter. I think I knit it like half the length of what it called for because I didn't want it to funnel up my neck too far. Just because the sweater was so big, I felt like it might be a little claustrophobic. So I knit it half the length. It just comes up like a little higher than a crew neck sweater would. The weight of the sweater does pull it down nicely so I don't feel like I'm choking. I would feel a little claustrophobic if it was any taller. I'm trying to think what other modifications I made because I did this so long ago. One modification I did make was on the ribbing. It calls for double twisted rib, which is where you twist the knits and the purls, but that was really hard on my hands. Honestly, I hate twisting purl stitches. I only twisted the knit stitches. All of the purl stitches are regular or untwisted. So you can see on the outside of the sleeve here, the stitches are twisted. And then if I flip it, you can see that the stitches are untwisted. I find that it honestly doesn't change the look of the ribbing from the outside at all. And like I do cuff the sleeves because they're quite long, but no one cares if they're untwisted on the inside. I think it looks intentional enough. And I do like the clean look of the twisted knit stitches, to be honest. But I just didn't have the patience or hand strength to twist the purls. Other than that, I knit this exactly to pattern. Yes, this is the Super Selene sweater. If you're thinking of making one of these, I would just do it because it's so striking. It definitely is a little bit out of my comfort zone, the boldness of the yoke and the contrast with the black and white, but I really love it and I think it's super fun. So yes, this is the first finished thing that I have to show you. I'm gonna try and go in chronological order in terms of when I finished each thing for all of my finished objects. So I believe the next thing that I finished after my Selene sweater was a pair of machine socks. Here they are. They're, okay, excuse that they're extremely wrinkled because they've just been folded in my drawer. Here, this one's a little better. I made another pair of CSM socks. These are knit on my 60 stitch cylinder, and I used the white color is the Isager sock yarn, which is an alpaca wool blend with nylon, I think. And then the heel, cuff, and toe is the Biscotte Morning Dew hand-dyed sock yarn, and it's just the leftover from the pair of socks I knit last year, so it was really good to get rid of that yarn because it's been sitting around forever. These are, like I said, knit on my 60 stitch cylinder. I made the heel, cuff, and toe the same as the last pair, but I shortened them, so I increased the rate that I was decreasing at. So they're shorter, so they fit my foot a little bit better. The last ones I made had a deeper heel and toe, and they were just a little bit too big for my feet still. So these ones are shallower and they fit perfectly. I think with the contrasting yarn, they maybe look a little puny. I don't know. They're pretty shallow, but if this were all one color, I don't think it would look as funny. So maybe next time I'll stop the foot a little bit short and then knit a few rounds straight of the contrast color before decreasing to keep it the same length but make it look a little more substantial on the toe there. I hope you can see that. So yeah, these are pretty much the same as the last pair except they're shorter. I made the leg a little bit longer, but I still did the 3x1 ribbing, and I did this surprisingly stretchy bind off on the heel. Overall, I am super pleased with these. The Isager sock yarn is really, really nice. I am pleasantly surprised with how it turned out, and the stitches from the machine are so uniform. It's honestly very satisfying. The yarn is really soft. I was worried it might not feel substantial because of the alpaca, and the yarn is pretty fine, but it does. It feels great. These have survived in my Doc Martens boots multiple times, gone through the wash multiple times, and they look pretty good aside from a few wrinkles. I'm very happy with that, and I'm also happy with how the heel and the toe have held up. I think I mentioned in my last video I was worried that not doing a slip stitch heel would make it so that it would wear down faster. When you do a slip stitch heel, you have basically double the layer of fabric here on the heel where the most friction is happening, and because I did just basically raglan decreases on the heel, there's only one layer of stockinette fabric, so it's obviously less robust robust or less thick and easier to wear down, but so far so good. So I'm happy with that. That is honestly all I have to say about these. I wanted to talk about my sock machine really quickly here too, because I said these are knit on my 60 stitch cylinder. So after I made these, I actually switched the cylinder to the 72 stitch to make a men's pair of socks. And I noticed that it has so much resistance on the 72 stitch cylinder. So when I crank a tube on that cylinder, it is so tight and it's almost impossible to crank, and the stitches drop and it's just very frustrating. So I have been having issues with that cylinder. I think, at least from what I can gather, watching very closely as I slowly crank each stitch, what I think is happening is that there's 12 extra stitches on the same circumference. And so the same amount of yarn is being fed through the machine, but it has to be spread across 72 stitches instead of 60. That means that each stitch gets less yarn and is much tighter. I think that increased resistance just makes it almost impossible to knit with. Yeah, that's kind of my dilemma. I so far have been unsuccessful in making a pair of men's socks because of this issue. If any of you have tried knitting on your CSM with a 72 stitch cylinder, please let me know any tips you might have. I think at this point I'm gonna just have to switch it back to a 60 and only make socks for myself or people with small feet. Something has to give, and so far I have tried everything and it's giving me some grief. But yes, that's enough sock machine talk. This is the pair of socks that I made. Let's move on to more exciting things. Okay, the next thing I have to talk about is very exciting because it is something you have not seen before, and it is an Esther sweater from Petite Knit. It is a top-down drop shoulder sweater with this textured pattern all throughout. The yarn is also very exciting. Back in March, my boyfriend and I went on a trip to Montreal and I visited the Les Garçons yarn shop. And I picked up a sweater quantity of this, which is their Falkland DK in the color NYX Current Obsession. This is a DK weight BFL Corriedale mix, I believe. And it's super soft and lofty. I think it's just a 2-ply yarn. It's this cherry red color that's just so striking. It really is like a red currant. And I got the matching silk mohair, so it's also in the color NYX Current Obsession. I just saw this and I thought the color was so striking. I had a vision and I decided to make the Esther sweater. So this is a DK weight sweater. It's 20 stitches on 4mm needles, I believe, and I think I hit 19 stitches. I knit the size small because I wanted it to be a little bit oversized. My measurements I think would have been for the size extra small. At first, when the Esther sweater came out, I wasn't super jazzed by it. I thought it was a little 80s vibe, like 80s ski lodge. I don't know, with the triangles and the texture of it and sort of the boxy fit. That's what it was giving to me. But it kind of grew on me over time, and when I saw that red color, I just thought this is the perfect sweater to make. I don't know, I had a vision of a bright red Esther sweater, and this is truly one of my favorite sweaters that I've knit so far in my entire lifetime of knitting, because the color is so bright and vibrant and I've gotten so much wear out of this in the springtime. Because the texture has knits and purls, it's not super dense. Like, it's a little, I don't know, because there is mohair, so it is warm. I'm not saying it's not warm, but it has some airflow, you know? It's a little oversized. There's some gaps in between, like on the moss stitch, you can kind of see through it, which is not a bad thing. I feel like it just adds a little more versatility and you can wear it more times throughout the year. I believe Les Garçons does hand dye all of their yarn, and they're from Montreal, so I thought it was perfect to get some of that yarn while I was on that trip. It definitely is a little bit bougie. As soon as I got the yarn, I cast on the sweater in our hotel in Montreal, and I think I finished this in like 3 weeks. I did make a few modifications to this pattern. I did the sleeve decreases according to size extra small, and I also did the neck pickup according to size extra small, but everything else was according to the size small, because I picked up the neck for the size small at first and it was just flaring out and it looked insane. So I went down a needle size and I did the extra small pickup. One thing that I really struggled with was picking up for the neck and for the sleeve on this sweater. Something about it didn't add up. Like, I was having so much trouble picking up the correct amount of stitches. I had to do it several times for both the neck and the sleeves. So I honestly like don't know what was going on there. It could be because I have a hard time picking up with moss stitch, and I really have a hard time reading that and picking up the stitches on the edge of the fabric in moss stitch. I don't know if that's just a me problem or if that's a common issue that people have. I kind of had to fudge it and just make do. Each sleeve has this panel of the texture pattern, and then underneath you have moss stitch. I'm pretty sure that the texture panel isn't like perfectly lined up on both sleeves. Like, I think it's somewhat asymmetrical. The shoulder seam is here, and then the texture pattern is here on this sleeve, which is the left sleeve. And then on the right sleeve, the texture pattern is like 4 stitches off. So it lines up with the shoulder seam here, whereas the other one doesn't. If that is something that bothers you, I would definitely be cautious when you're picking up the stitches and when you're doing your first round of the sleeve, because you have to follow a chart all the way around the sleeve. So if you want it to line up perfectly, you might have to shift the chart or move like your beginning of round marker to get them to both line up. At first I was really worried that it would bother me, but I just went with it because I was having so much trouble with the sleeves. I was like, screw it, I'm gonna leave it as it is, and it is what it is. It's really not that bad. I personally haven't noticed it at all since I finished this sweater. When you're wearing it, it kind of shifts around anyway, so oversized sweaters are very forgiving in that way, I feel like. Other than that, I knit it to pattern. I think I even followed the length, which is surprising. I feel like petite knit patterns are very hit and miss with the length. Like, some of them I have to crop significantly, and then other ones are perfect just the way they are. So I don't know, usually what I do is I just start knitting and measure as I go, and once I hit the right length, I just do the ribbing and bind off, and I don't even read the pattern most of the time in terms of the sweater length. Yeah, this is my Esther sweater. I love it. The pattern was a classic petite knit, just standard. I didn't have any issues other than the sleeve pickups. The texture pattern was pretty straightforward, but it took a while to get in the swing of it, especially when you're knitting flat on the front and back yoke. It is kind of hard to read when you're just starting and you have just a little bit of knitting. I had to really be careful and pay attention to what I was doing, but once I got in the round, it was way easier. Definitely worth the effort. I think the fit of this sweater is incredible. So yeah, that is my Esther sweater from Petite Knit. The next thing I wanted to talk about is something I finished recently, but I don't have it with me. I'll put some pictures on the screen as I'm talking about it though. It is the Melange sweater Baby from Petite Knit. This is the very first baby knit that I've ever made, and it was so much fun and satisfying because it knit up so quickly because it's so tiny. It's a top-down drop shoulder sweater knit with 2 strands of fingering weight yarn. I've knit the men's version of this, and so it was exactly the same, just way smaller for the baby version. The size I did was the smallest size, which I think is 3 to 6 months, although it seems kind of big for that, but I didn't gauge swatch, so my gauge very well could have been off. But yeah, I knit the smallest size. I knit it with 2 strands of fingering. This is the Sandnes Garn Baby O Lanet. It's in the color red, and then I have the Sisu from Sandnes Garn in this pink color. I made this sweater for a friend of mine who's expecting in August. They're having a baby girl, so I thought that these colors were perfect. Not that the colors matter at all, but I just really liked the pink and red combination. One of my friends who also knits, she made this exact sweater for one of her coworkers' babies in similar colors. It is so cute, and I kind of wanted to copy her flow as well and make the same sweater because it just turned out so well. So yeah, this is the color combination. This is the sweater. Hopefully I put it somewhere on the screen for you. The process of making it was honestly so straightforward. It's just a plain old sweater. The thing that I had a problem with was I didn't print the pattern, and normally when I knit I print out all the patterns so that I can mark them up and whatnot as I'm working on it. But this one I thought, oh, it's so easy. I don't have to print it. Like, I can just check my phone here and there and it'll be fine. Little did I know, I actually did have to print it because I wound up fudging the pattern so many times. I at first forgot to knit an entire front shoulder panel, and then I had to pull back and redo it. Then I forgot to knit the increases for the neckline. It was just a mess. I think I wound up unraveling it like 3 or 4 times, but even still, considering all of the mistakes I made and having to frog it and re-knit it, I still finished it in like a week. So that was honestly so satisfying, and probably my favorite part of doing the baby knit is just having it done so quickly. I sewed a little tag in the back of it to help them figure out which way is the back, because I feel like people have trouble with the hand knits if there's no tag. So I put a little tag in, and that was a gift from my knitting friend a while ago, and it just turned out so cute. This yarn also, I hadn't knit with any of this yarn. I went to the Myrtle wool shop and I just picked whatever superwash yarn I could find in the right colors of like what I was looking for. So it was these Sandnes garn yarns. So these are superwash. I had never knit with these before. I find that the sisu has a little bit more like superwashiness to it. It feels like it has more stretch, whereas the baby lamb's wool is definitely woolier feeling. Like it doesn't feel as much like a superwash as this one. Even though the sisu has a little bit more of that elasticity, it doesn't feel like squeaky and slippery to knit with, which is nice because I believe both of these are superwash treated, but yeah, they don't really feel like it. And I don't think that it'll be an issue with the baby's skin being sensitive. They basically feel like Sandnes Garn Sunday, so they're pretty soft. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that knit, and that was a quick one, but that's the Melange sweater baby. That does it for everything I've finished in the past few months, so let's talk about the things that I'm currently working on. I have a couple lingering whips, and I won't talk about everything, but one thing I do want to share is the progress on my Dagmar zipper sweater, which is kind of minimal. And this is what we have. So this is the Dagmar zipper sweater from Petite Knit. It's a top-down drop shoulder quarter zip sweater with this cable texture pattern all throughout, and it's knit on a worsted weight on 4.5mm needles. I'm knitting this with the worsted weight yarn from Topsy Farms, which is a local sheep farm to me, and it's in the medium gray color. I have been slowly but surely chugging along on this, and I honestly don't remember what it looked like the last time I showed it to you, but I finished a sleeve, you guys. I finished a sleeve. Here it is. The sleeve is done. I have all of my stitch markers here to remember where I decreased. It is looking incredible, if I do say so myself. The ribbing is just a 1x1 on the cuff, and then I did a tubular cast off, and it has this cable pattern all the way down the sleeve. It has some decreases. It has quite a few decreases actually. I think I followed the pattern in terms of the number of decreases. There are, let me count them, 13 decreases, so it's possible I left 1 or 2 out. I don't remember how many are in the pattern. I just knit it to whatever length I thought would be good for my arm, so it seems good. I'm currently working on the second sleeve, and then I'll continue with the body. The body's just on hold right now. This is kind of how I like to do things. I like to do the sleeves first because I want them to both be identical, and if I leave it, I'm afraid that I will forget what I did. And also, I just like to make sure I don't run out of yarn, because the body of most sweaters I make is cropped or short anyway because of my short torso. So I'd rather run out of yarn on the body than run out of yarn on a sleeve, because I can always just bind off the body. So yeah, this is what it's looking like. Nothing really to report. I can show you the back. I haven't knit on this in a while because I have some other exciting things that I've been working on, and this is like totally midwinter wool warm vibes, and it's 35 degrees, so haven't been super motivated to knit on this, but I've picked it up here and there, and I'm very excited to have it done eventually. The next thing I have to share is actually a summer knit, which is super exciting, and it is the Sevilla Blouse from Petite Knit. I can put a picture here because what I have so far doesn't really look like anything. This is what it's looking like. It's literally just the back panel currently. This is a top-down drop shoulder boat neck style long sleeve top from Petite Knit. It just has a straight sleeve. I was debating knitting this or knitting the blouse number 1 from My Favorite Things Knitwear, which is, I think the gauge is the same and the neckline is essentially the same, but it has a bell sleeve and it has some increases on the sleeve instead of just a straight sleeve as in the Petite Knit one. I actually have both patterns, so I compared them and I kind of decided I like the fit of the petite knit one better in terms of the torso. And if I decide once I get to the sleeves that I want some increases, I'll just follow the increases for the blouse number 1 at that time. But for now, I'm just following the Sevilla Blouse. I'm making the size small. This is the fabric. It's turning out really nicely. It's a little bit holey or like loose. This is the gauge that it calls for in the pattern. With just a tank top underneath, it'll be fine, or even a nude bralette. So yeah, not very exciting, but I did just cast this on like 2 weeks ago and I left it at home during my trips. The progress is not bad considering I've only worked on this for a few days. The yarn I'm using is probably more exciting than what this looks like. I'm using 1 strand of the Sandnes Garn Lena in the color 4315, which is a fingering weight linen blend, and this is one of my favorite summer yarns to work with. And I'm holding it with 1 strand of the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Raspberry Pink. And look at how well these match. Like, are you kidding me? This is the perfect Barbie pink summer, like raspberry sorbet kind of color, and I'm here for it. I was worried that they wouldn't match because I ordered them online. Like, you really cannot tell that they're different. When you look at the ball, it seems like the Knitting for Olive is a little bit warmer and a little bit more muted, whereas the Sandnes Garn is a little cooler toned and a little more vibrant. But holding them together is incredible, and I've knit with both of these individually, but I've never held them together. I'm really loving the way this fabric is turning out too because of the little nubs on the pure silk. The fabric has such a nice texture to it. This is currently my only summer knits, and this is what it's looking like. Yeah, not much else to say. I'm super excited to have this done so I can hopefully wear it before it gets too cold. Other than that, I haven't honestly been super inspired by the new summer knit patterns that are out right now. I know this one has been out for a while. It's another one of those that when it came out it was super hyped and I didn't really care about it, but it's grown on me and now I think that I'm ready. I'm ready for a Sevilla blouse. So this is it. Hopefully there's going to be more exciting updates on this the next time I film a video. The last work in progress that I have to show you is a pair of mittens actually. I know it's summertime, why am I casting on mittens, but it's fine. I have them here and they're convertible. So I've started one of them. This is what it's looking like. It's basically knit from the wrist up. You put the thumb on hold and you cast off with some ribbing just before you would knit the finger holes. And then on the back of the mitten, you pick up stitches here and you cast some on and you start working in the round. You create this little tube and you eventually close it so that you have a little flap that like covers your fingers. I hope that you can get an idea for that just with this because it looks kind of crazy. But yeah, they're convertible mittens. So this is what it's looking like. This is the first mitten and it's the left mitten. I've made the mistake before of 2 left mittens, so I'm gonna make sure to do a right one after this. The pattern is a Finnish pattern actually. I'm not even gonna bother pronouncing it. I'll put it on the screen. The pattern is not available in English unfortunately, so I purchased it and then I translated it and I'm just working with a translation, so I'm hoping that it's not completely off. So far, so good. It seems to fit. The only issue I had was with the gauge. I truly don't know what my gauge is because I brought this on my trip to Iceland and I cast it on right before. I didn't have a chance to gauge swatch, but these are for my boyfriend. He specifically requested some convertible mittens and he picked out the yarn specifically for a pair of convertible mittens, so he's very excited about this. I did measure his hand before I cast on and it gave me the measurements for the largest size on this pattern, but once I started knitting that size, I got just past the cuff and I had him try it on and it was huge. I don't know what was going on there and I didn't gauge swatch before I brought this on my trip, so I just frogged it and I recast on for the second largest size. I think there's 4 sizes in this pattern, so it's like the small adult size and that fit him way better. When I'm putting this on my hand, it's pretty big and like this would be the size that I would make for myself if I was just following the directions. So I don't know what's going on there. I'll have to measure my gauge and see if it's the same as the pattern. And if it is, then there's just a sizing issue or maybe a translation issue. I don't know. But yeah, this fits his hand really well. I'm just currently working on knitting this finger flap. Why don't I talk about the construction actually? So I mentioned it's from the cuff up towards the fingers. You do some increases and then you put the thumb on hold and you keep knitting a tube for the fingers. And then what you have to do is cast on with a tubular cast on for this part of the flap. And then you pick up stitches on the stockinette fabric here. The way that you pick them up is actually really interesting, and I've never done it this way before. You pick up the leg in between the stitch. So if the stitch is like this, you stick the needle in the V of the knit and you pick up the leg. It's really, honestly, it was tricky to make sure that every stitch was in the same row because, like, obviously you want it to be straight across. I think I managed. I don't know. It's possible that I was off by a stitch here or there, but you can't tell. It seems pretty straight across. It looks super clean. You can see obviously where it's tight where I picked it up, but the stitches look pretty continuous. So I'm really happy with that, actually. The hardest part was, one, like I said, making sure it was all in the same row. And also, when you pick up the leg, it makes it super tight. So I had to actually use a smaller needle size to pick up here than it called for because I just couldn't even fit the 3mm needle in to the stitch. Yeah, once you pick up here, then you connect in the round and you knit a tube basically until it's long enough to cover your fingers. And then you start decreasing and you cast off. And then I think later I'll pick up for the thumb, and it has a finished thumb, and then the finger, it's just the finger hole that's open. Overall, considering it's a translation of a finished pattern, I think it's turning out really well, other than the sizing issue. This is knit on a 3mm needle, and then the ribbing I did on a 2.75mm needle. It says to do it on a 2.5, but I just didn't have one, so there you go, 2.75, and it looks just fine. The yarn that I'm using is also from Topsy Farms. It's their worsted again, so it's the same yarn that I'm using for the Dagmar zipper sweater, but it's in their purple mix. I think that's what it's called. It's like blue and red fibers spun together, and it's this really cool purple color. I think it looks really interesting when it's all knit up as well. He picked out this color. It was his favorite. He requested a pair of mittens, so that is what he shall get. That was the last work in progress that I had to talk about. The next thing I want to discuss quickly is the yarn that I got while I was in Iceland. I just got back from Iceland a few days ago. My boyfriend and I went for 8 days, drove the ring road, so we drove around the entire country. Of course, I had to get some yarn. I wanted to just chat about all the yarn places that I went and the yarny goodies that I got while I was there because it was so exciting seeing everything. We started off in Reykjavik. We went to a place called the Hand Knitting Association of Iceland. This was a place in the capital city in Iceland. They had a lot of handmade sweaters and hats that were so beautiful. They were super expensive, rightfully so. I had never honestly seen handmade sweaters for sale in a store in that large a quantity. It was honestly insane. There was an entire room just full of beautiful colorwork yoke sweaters. I was in heaven. And then they had another room in the store that had yarn. The main commercial yarn that they have in Iceland is from Istex. They have like Plotalopi, Letlopi, all different kinds of Istex yarn, and that is 100% Icelandic sheep's wool. So when I was at the Hand Knitting Association, I did get some yarn. This is the yarn I got. Here it is. Okay, so this is Letlopi from Istex. It's a worsted weight yarn, and this is 100% Icelandic sheep's wool. This is in the color 1702, which is this really beautiful, like, blue, pink, kind of cloud, cotton candy color. It's one of the few yarns that they have that's multi-dimensional. I got 7 balls of this, and then I also got 2 balls of this color 0051, which is again Letlopi, but it's this white color. It's like a natural cream. And then I got 2 balls of this, which is the color 1412, and it's this pink color, and it has a little bit of blue purple specks in it. All 3 of these together I think are gonna make such a beautiful colorwork yoke sweater, and I'm planning on making this one from Istex. This blue is gonna be the main color, and then these 2 are gonna be the contrast colors. I'm so excited for it. It's gonna take me a while because it's colorwork and it's flat, but I think it's gonna be worth it. So yes, this is the first sweater quantity of yarn I got while I was in Iceland. I'll give you one last look. I'll put them all together here. The next place I went was called Uppspunny Mini Mill, which is towards the south coast of Iceland. There's a locally owned sheep farm and mill, and the lady who owns it, she shears her own sheep, dyes it, and spins all of the wool herself. She has a couple varieties of yarn, but I got the Hulduband. It's a worsted weight yarn, and it's in the color HG0025-8. It's an undyed color. So this is the natural color of the sheep here. This is a worsted weight 100% Icelandic sheep's wool yarn. And I got 2 balls of this, and it is 100 meters per ball. So this will be enough to make a hat, and that is what I plan to do. It is definitely more woolly and rustic than the Letlopi. Like, I felt Letlopi, they sell it in Canada, but I thought it was kind of special getting it in Iceland. This, definitely you cannot get this in Canada. This is woolly, and it has almost like hairs. Like, I don't know if you can see that. There's little hairs coming out of it. I'm curious to see how this turns out when it's blocked. It says it's a worsted weight, but this seems quite thin for a worsted weight. So I'm thinking that it's going to plump up a lot, and I'm super excited to see how this turns out. Her shop was honestly, it was so beautiful. All the yarn was just stunning. It was stunning. She has some really bright, vibrant colors too. I thought it would be special just to get the natural, undyed color. So yeah, this is a hat quantity of yarn from Uppspunny Mini Mill. Everything in Iceland is really expensive because it has to be shipped over because it's an island. So we didn't eat out a whole lot when we were there. We went to grocery stores and got some snacks and things like that along the way. When we went into a grocery store called Netto, there was a whole display of Istex Icelandic sheep yarn and Sandnes garn just like in the grocery store. I honestly, like, I was in shock. I couldn't believe it. So, you know, I had to do it to them. I got Plotalopi. Oh my god. Okay, so it comes in this little plastic sleeve. This is the color 1766. I'm gonna set this down because it's probably very crinkly. I took 1 ball out of the sleeve to show you guys. This is the color I got. It's this like bright, fiery orange color, and I'm obsessed with it. It's giving pumpkin, Halloween pumpkin on fire, if that makes sense. I don't know if the camera is going to do it justice, but it is like vibrant orange. And I've never seen Plotalopi in this color in Canada. So I saw it at the grocery store and I was like, yes, that is coming home with me. I need it. This is an unspun yarn. This is what it looks like. It literally looks like roving, but it's skinny. It just comes apart like you can literally just pull it apart. I have never knit with anything like this, and I'm honestly, I'm a little nervous, I'm not gonna lie. But I've heard a lot of really good things because apparently it's fragile when you knit with it, but then the staple length is long enough that once it's knit up, it's really strong and durable. I'm a little skeptical, but I'm excited to try. This is again 100% Icelandic sheep's wool, but it's unspun. It's 300 meters per 100 grams. So one of these is 100 grams roughly. I got 3 of them to make a sweater. My plan is to make the cloud sweater from Petite Knit. That uses a blown yarn and a silk mohair. So I feel like this is going to be a good substitute for a blown yarn because it's so light and lofty. And I'm going to hold this with a silk mohair, which I have. This is the Knitting for Olive silk mohair in the color blood orange. They're not exactly the same color, but I think that they complement each other so well. The blood orange is a very like warm leaning red, kind of like a fiery red. I think it's going to turn out like the perfect fiery orange color when I knit them together. I have yet to gauge swatch for this, but I've seen people on Ravelry knit with Plotalopi and a strand of silk mohair and get gauge for the cloud sweater, so I think it'll be fine. I think technically this is a fingering weight. It's so fluffy you can get away with using it as a sport or a DK and it'll be fine. So yeah, this is the other sweater quantity of yarn that I got in Iceland. It's so squishy and light. I'm so excited to have this sweater for the fall and winter. That is it for the yarn I got in Iceland. That trip was incredible. I saw sheep everywhere. There's just sheep crossing the road. There's sheep on the side of the road, in the mountains. I can show some pictures here of some sheep sightings that I had, but there was also a lot of yarn sightings and I did have to restrain myself, but I'm really happy with the variety that I got. I've never knit with any Istex yarn before, and I was skeptical because I always had the impression that it was scratchy. Feeling it, I don't think it's very scratchy at all. It's definitely rustic, but it's not any worse than the yarn that I got from Topsy Farms. It's rustic in a good way, in a manageable way. So yeah, I'm super excited to get gauge swatching for those projects. That's all I had to talk about today. I have said a lot and I'm so happy to be back sharing my knitting with you. I'm finally done my sewing escapades so I can really focus on my knitting. Hopefully I have some updates for you guys in the coming weeks of things that are getting finished up. If you want more frequent updates on the things that I'm working on, you can check out my Instagram, which is at hella.knits. My Ravelry is at hella knitting, and everything that I'm discussing will be listed down below and also in my Ravelry projects page. If you have any questions or ideas for things I should cast on in the future, things you want to see, leave it down below in the comments. And if you have any suggestions about fixing the tension on my sock machine, please let me know as well. Until next time, happy knitting, and I will see you